Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pets, People, Life, and Longevity. And I am Jan Jeremias, and I'm here with my canine companion, Tonka. A little bit about me. I'm a trained scientist who began exploring holistic and alternative modalities about 18 years ago. It's kind of scary to say that. I began my journey with the use of essential oils and began exploring modalities such as Reiki, gentle massage, and other things for pets and people too. I'm the co-author of the top-selling book, Spoil Your Pet, a practical guide to using essential oils in dogs and cats. And today I'm so excited because I have one of my favorite people and a good friend, my friend Jeffrey Evans, who is going to speak to us about his mission on his mission for animal wellness and animal caretaking and his passion for that. And so a little bit about Jeff. Jeff lives in Washington now and runs a in-home animal hospice for differently abled dogs and cats and other animals. I mean, at this point, I have no idea what he has anymore. And he's going to share all the animals that they have and a little bit about what he's doing. But first, I want to welcome you, Jeff. Thanks for getting on.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you, Jan. And Tonka.
And I get to spend some time with my angels. And so, that is the name of Jeff's beautiful mission, and his organization is Angels With Misplaced Wings. And there's our little diva Holly over there.
It is Holly the diva. Holly's from Thailand, so she's a foreigner.
She's a foreigner, but we love her so much. And so Jeff, tell us a little bit about how you got started, and then we can go into where you are now.
Sure. We got started it's been a long time now. So I guess for a long time, my husband and I wanted to have more than 2 dogs. We had 2 the first couple of years of our relationship, and we always wanted a third at least, and talked about having lots of dogs. Actually, we lived in San Francisco and owned a condo, and so we were limited to having 2. But then in 2010, we had the opportunity to leave San Francisco and move to Vancouver, Washington. And as soon as we knew that was happening, we were like, we're getting another dog. And at the time we had a Dalmatian and a Great Dane. And we decided we were going to add another Dalmatian. And I started doing research, and we met with a wonderful group called Save a Spot, which is based in Turlock, California. We drove out, and at the time it was 2 women, and they kept kind of younger, more adoptable dogs at one house, and then they had a crew of seniors and misfits and dogs with issues that they kept at another house. And between the 2 places, they had like 45 Dalmatians at the time. And we met 30 dogs at the first place. And, it's really, there are always animals that need a home, but it's also about a connection, and you don't just pick any dog. It has to, you just know. And we just weren't really getting any vibes from any of the dogs that were there. And so they offered to take us over to the senior house, as I called it. And we met 12 more dogs, and it was the very last dog, Vivian. She came out, she was 12, and mostly blind. And she came up, and I got down on my knees, and she stood up and she hugged me and put her head in my neck. And then we spent an hour with her and walking around, and Michael and I we're talking about whether or not we could take care of a senior blind dog. And now, where we are so many years later, we laugh about this. And so we finally just came to the realization after spending an hour with her was that we loved her, and that we knew with the dogs that we had, Megan and Caesar, that we were never going to stop loving them and we were never going to stop taking care of them. And that meant that someday they were going to be older and probably blind or deaf or have whatever issues, and we would just figure out how to take care of them. So we made that commitment to Vivian, and we took her home. And Vivian was just from the start, she was an inspiration. We got home and we parked on the street in San Francisco, and we opened the back of the car, and she just jumped out and splatted on the ground because she couldn't see where she was going. She stood up and she shook herself off, and then she walked right into a telephone pole and she shook herself right off. And for the very short 6 months that we had her, that's how Vivian lived her life. She was never afraid of anything. She just lived life fully, every single day. And it was just a couple weeks after we got her that we found out she had mammary cancer. And so she had a couple of surgeries, and we moved during that time, and we discovered that there were things like ophthalmologists to help with her blindness, and that there were oncologists to help with her cancer. And that really just started a mission, because we realized that there were a lot of dogs like Vivian who were getting passed up and left behind. And so I just started looking for more dogs like her, and we adopted, the next dog was a blind diabetic lab. And then we adopted a deaf wiener dog named Camo, which is the first Angel that you worked with, several years later. And so it just became, well, what's one more dog? And here we are, 12 years later, a little more than 12 years later, and we have provided a forever home to over 30 special needs dogs, and helped them live their best lives. And that has been a process. And part of that process was being committed to providing them with the best care. And that meant having to learn what was available, and being open to you're open to practices that maybe we didn't know about. Like at the time, when I started this, I mean, now you talk to me and you would think that I've always done acupuncture and massage and Chinese medicine and essential oils. But I didn't do any of that stuff for myself. And I still really don't. But I do for the dogs. They get far better care than me. So that was kind of how we got started, was Vivian. And she, propelled us into this. And then we realized, we've done a lot of dogs over the years, but we've always wanted to have farm animals. And we moved last year to 23 acres, and we're slowly in the process of working towards having farm animals. We have 2 pigs and 1 cow, and 1 turkey. So that's kind of where we're at right now, and 13 dogs.
And 13 dogs. I was going to ask you how many dogs you have at this point, because through the years, like you said, you've done had senior dogs, you've had dogs that have had a myriad of illnesses, and so some have passed on and transitioned, and you get new ones. And so I wasn't quite sure of the most recent number in the book. And so just to go through each one that you have now, I'm just
okay.
If you can remember all 13. So
I have I can, of course, remember all 13. So we have, um, Benjamin is a little wired-haired dachshund. He was saved from a puppy mill when he was about a year old. We've had him since 2012. Yeah, 2012. And he would be the longest running angel at this point. We've had him the longest. Gosh, no, 2010, 2011. So, no, we got it. I'm sorry, 2011. We got him in 2011. And then we have Iris, and Iris is a deaf Dalmatian, and we got her when she was 3 months old. And she's now going to be 10 in December. She has seizures. She had some other minor health issues when she was a puppy. She had a recurrent UTIs, and she had to have a vulvoplasty to correct her vulva, which was holding bacteria. And then she's always been, she marches to her own drum, and she's had multiple visits to neurologists and behaviorists, and internal medicine specialists, and they've all determined that while it's still a relatively new concept / diagnosis, that she falls on the spectrum of autism somewhere. We don't know a lot about autism in animals. We're just starting to have that conversation, but there's no doubt that Iris is somewhere on the spectrum of that. You could have a whole podcast just about Iris.
I know. Well, Iris is biased to Iris because, because she's a Dalmatian, and because I love her, and she's just, with all her stuff, she's just adorable.
Yeah, Iris makes there's no apologies for how she chooses to live her life. And there's absolutely, with the help of our behaviorists that we've had through the years and the neurologists, there's no controlling Iris. Like, she couldn't live in a household where she would be controlled, or somebody would try to control her. It's just not possible. Iris thrives in this house because we've simply come to the fact that she is who she is. And our job is just to keep her safe as she explores the world the way that she wants to. So that's what we do. And at almost 10 years old, she still hasn't slowed down at all. It's amazing to me. So
I can relate, because Tonka hasn't slowed down at all, and people are always astonished when I say he's almost 11, and people will say he acts like he's 2.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said for that, because obviously I'm doing a good job keeping him young. But yes, every now and then I'm like, really? Like, could you just mellow out a little bit?
I figure, I've determined a long time ago that, like, I don't look forward to the day that Iris slows down. Yeah, it's, as challenging as it can be day to day, like, I can't imagine what life will be like without her, because there's so much going on.
Right.
She keeps you on your toes. So then after Iris, we have Holly, who you briefly met at the beginning. Holly is a street dog saved from the illegal meat trade in Thailand. She is paralyzed due to a cyst in her spinal cord. She's actually blind in her left eye from a detached retina. That's an injury that happens to a lot of meat trade dogs from the way that they're treated. She also has a partially detached right retina. When we got her, though, she had learned to compensate so well for her blindness. We had no idea that she couldn't see. Her eyes, having had several blind dogs, you typically know by the way that they move their eyes that they can't see. She was very convincing that she was looking at you and responding to you. And even her ophthalmologist at first wasn't, until he did his exam, he didn't think that she was blind, but she just had learned to compensate for her blindness. So Holly's been with us since 2013. Same with Iris. And then we have Hemi, who's another Dalmatian, and he was actually supposed to be just a typical dog, no issues. We actually got him as a therapy dog to help Iris, but we have learned over the years that every dog comes to us for a reason, and Hemi had his own behavioral issues, as well as when those presented, the diagnostics revealed that he had some physical differences as well. He's missing a vertebra in his spine. He had damage to his skull over the occipital region. He's had issues with his liver, and he has fear-based anxiety, which makes him a very reactive dog. He does well with people, not so much with other animals. Fortunately, he does get along with Iris, and he did really help Iris, especially when she was younger, just manage her life so that she wasn't getting in as much trouble or hurting herself, because he was keeping her occupied. She needed a playmate that could keep up with her. We couldn't do any kind of mental stimulation activities with her to keep her occupied, because that worsened her condition, or not worsened, but amplified some of those traits that were not healthy for her. So Hemi's been with us since later in 2013. I guess I'm going to skip to Jeb, because Jeb is currently keeps hitting the table that my iPad is on. That's why it keeps moving. Nothing is sacred. Nothing is sacred in this house. So I apologize for that. Jeb, we got back in 2018. He is age-wise our oldest angel. He's 12, and he's a German Shepherd that was picked up off the streets in San Diego. Has, not surprisingly, hip dysplasia, because he's a German Shepherd. He, based on what they were able to determine from the shelter, he lived most of his life outside. It doesn't, based on his interactions with humans, it doesn't seem like he had a lot of experience with humans, and what experience he had was probably negative. And I will say, because we provide a lot of different types of care to the angels, and all of them have always eventually gotten on board with all the special care that they get. Jeb definitely walks to his own beat. We can only do what he allows us to do. He has never really gotten into the physical therapy to help with his body. He's not big on acupuncture. We do our best, but 4 years into having him, he just is who he is. And so we don't force him to do all those things, because he's just not into them. So yeah, he, as he's getting older, having a harder time getting around from the hip dysplasia, and because he didn't receive the care he needed when he developed that condition prior to us, he actually has disc disease where he blew out some of his discs. So he walks like a drunken sailor. But he's still alive. I mean, he's a sweetie. He just has his own rules, as most of the angels do. Let's see, we have Dixie. Dixie came to live with us about a year ago. She is paralyzed after being shot twice in Alabama, where she's from. We don't know why. We don't know the details. She was found in a ditch unable to move, and she received surgery to remove the bullets, but it did leave her paralyzed. And then she waited for 2 years for and was not marketed, but marketed by the rescue that she was with uh, to find her home. And she did get a temporary home, but after 3 months, 6 months, they said they weren't able to take care of her. So essentially, she waited 2 years for a family, and that's kind of our where we fall in as a sanctuary. At some point, we have to just these animals deserve all animals deserve a home, and a shelter isn't a home. And while fosters are wonderful, it's still not a home. It's not a family. Energetically, animals know that they're not there forever.
Mhm.
In my opinion, that's been my experience. And those things are all shelters and fosters are all steps in the process and all necessary. But at some point, we have to say enough is enough of that. And this dog, this animal needs a home. They need to be somewhere. That's where we come in. We fill that void. We just say, let's take them out of the system. We'll keep them forever. We're done. And so that's, Dixie fit right into that mold. She'd waited long enough. So then when she was being transported by her long-term foster, they drove her across country, and they rented a motorhome so that they could do that. And several days into their trip, Dixie was riding in between them in between the front seats where they were at, and unbeknownst to Dixie, who has no pain sensation, and to her humans, because she couldn't feel it, the floor got very, very hot of the RV, and she burned. She had severe burns on her back, right leg, and butt area, and they were severe. Once they got her here, we spent 2 months washing her wounds every day, debriding the dead tissue, bandaging. She's had not major surgeries, but several small surgeries to close up certain areas of the wound. That was June of 2021. We're actually still, the healing went really great for the first 3 months. Things started to slow down a little bit, as is typical with burn wounds. You usually get a lot of great healing at first, and then things slow down. So she's still not, we're more than a year out. She's still not 100% healed. She has this little tiny opening, which we've addressed multiple times. And we're still trying to figure out how we're going to fix that. And that's with acupuncture and honey, using Manuka honey and different healing methods and laser therapy. Like, we do all the things and we're still having trouble with this. So, but all in all, she's doing great. We just have to get that to heal. And then we have Promise. Promise was, Promise is a pit bull, and she's paralyzed, younger. She was dropped off at the shelter about 5 months old. They said they accidentally shut her in a car door, and that's what broke her spine. We don't know for sure. She's paralyzed. The shelter did their very, very best to provide her with what she needed, but she did end up with some behavior issues as a result of living in a shelter. So she's got severe anxiety and fear-based reactivity due to that anxiety. And the shelter had her for a year and a half. And, there was little interest in her. And then when they found out she had a bite history, pretty significant bite history, a lot of people backed out. And her options were nil by the time that we got involved. And it's been it's a long haul. She definitely requires special handling and understanding, and we've all been bit by her. And that's just part of living with promise. So that's her. Let's see, we did Jeb. We've got Fiona. Fiona joined the family in June. She is a golden retriever. She is paralyzed as well, came from Mexico. She had lived with a woman her entire life from the time she was a puppy. And then her human had a medical emergency, and in the chaos of that, Fiona was hit by a car and left overnight on the side of the road, unbeknownst to anybody. And so she's paralyzed. And unfortunately, her human was not able to care for her anymore. A friend stepped up to help her through rehab, but then it was time for her to go do things in her own life, and so Fiona didn't have a place to go. And so she's here with us, just so that she didn't have to go through any horrible foster experiences, rescue experiences, getting moved around. We're like, let's just not even put her in the system. Let's just get her into a home now. Let's see. And then we've got our most recent addition is over here to my right, but she's sleeping. And that's Calypso. She came from a rescue partner that's not far from us. Calypso is a paralyzed French bulldog. And the rescue she was with tried to place her for about 16 months and really had no viable candidates, in that one person applied and then they kind of disappeared after they met her. After that, there was nobody else. So they finally decided that they just weren't having luck placing her and asked if we would take her. And rescues often want to be able to send animals to sanctuaries because their job is to do frontline rescue. It's to save lives. And when they have a dog that they're not able to, every organization has finite resources, whether that be their funds or foster families. They can only do what they can do with what they have. And so if they have a dog that isn't getting adopted, that means they don't have a foster home. So they're not able to, be out there saving lives. So when we decide to take a dog, that lets them get back to doing what they do best.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got Calypso, and then we've got Jack, who is from Costa Rica. He's paralyzed. We have a masseuse for the dogs that we've worked with for a very long time. Her name's Rachel, or not Rachel. Well, we work with Rachel. Ruby.
Mm-hmm.
We worked with Ruby first. It's Ruby's business, and then she has Rachel that works with her. But a few years ago, 2018, Ruby went to Costa Rica, and leading up to that, she asked us, knowing that there are a lot of special needs dogs in countries like Costa Rica, a lot of dogs that are paralyzed or two-legged. She asked if she found a dog, if she could bring one back for us. And because we had a long-standing relationship, we told her, sure, if you find a dog that you think will be a good fit, then you can bring him back, him or her. She found Jack and brought him back. He's paralyzed, but otherwise no other differences or health issues. And he's been with us since 2018. And then we have Santo. Santo is a two-legged dog from Mexico, Tijuana, Mexico. I've heard different versions of what happened to him. The details are a little fuzzy. Animals are essentially just not treated very well in areas like Tijuana. So anything really could have happened to him. I do know that they made attempts over a very long period of time, more than a year, to try to help Santo when he was discovered to be paralyzed. But he was uncooperative and he was elusive. So it took them a while to finally get him where they could help him. And by the time they did, his legs were severely infected and they had to be amputated. So he is a two-legged pooch. And because of his injuries, he is basically, if he's moving, he's pooping and peeing. He has no control over his bladder or his defecation. So he's been interesting to learn how to work with because of that. But so full of life and such a ham and a lover. And then we have Remy. Remy is an English bulldog. He is deaf. He has spina bifida, and he's three-legged. And he also came from the same rescue partner that we got, Calypso. They had been trying to find him a home, and kind of the more the more issues that you add on, the more challenging it is to find a home. A lot of people can deal with a deaf dog, or they can deal with spina bifida, or whatever. But you start putting those all together, and people lose their confidence in their ability to help. And so that was, that rescue partner was like, we've had him for a long time. And she knew that we had always wanted a bulldog as part of the family if it was the right fit. And it was. So then we had him. Or we have him. All right, last dog, Dora. Dora is from Mexico as well. She's not the last one. Sorry. Almost forgot another one. Mm-hmm. So Dora's from Mexico. She was hit by a car and it severed her spine. She was well known in her village or small town. She had been the mother to several litters of puppies. When she was injured, she had a litter of puppies and she was still taking care of them despite being injured. So a group of people got together and helped her. She had surgery to stabilize her spine. They found a home for her puppies. And then I had reached out to this organization about a different dog and was just a couple days late. They had already placed that dog. And then Dora popped up. And so we took Dora. She got into a squabble. We had her for a few months and she got into a squabble with one of the other dogs and got bit in the face. And much to my dismay, her lower jaw got broken. And I was really confused even before I went to the doctor. I was like, that really shouldn't have happened. And I was right. She actually had, because of being a street dog and having no dental care, she had actually developed bacteria in the bone of her jaw and it had rotted. And it's one of those things that you don't know until they get sick. And she had been to the doctors and there was just nothing to show that she had that going on. So now she has a short jaw on the bottom because we had to remove it, but now all of the bacteria and infection is gone. So that little squabble actually saved her life because typically what happens is that goes undiagnosed until they get a systemic infection.
Right.
And then by then it's too late. And there's nothing you can do for them. So that dog squabble saved her life, which was nice, even though it didn't seem like it at the time.
Right.
And then finally, dog-wise, we have Canelo. He joined the family earlier this year. He is also from Mexico, but Dora's from outside of Mexico City. Canelo is from the West Coast, not Baja, but somewhere. I don't know Mexico very well, but he's over on the coast, just not Baja. And he was with a wonderful organization that had him for 2 years. Nobody had offered or expressed any interest in adopting him. And they had actually reached out to us a year before we took him, and we were in the process of moving to our farm. And I was like, I'm like, I can't even consider. And life moved on. And then a year later, they reached out and they were like, we've been watching, we know you're settled, we still have him. And so voila, plans were made and he came here. And so he's paralyzed. He also has this really cool indentation in his head. They're not 100% sure what happened, but it looks like they know he was hit several times by cars, so he probably sustained, some sort of injury there. So that's Canelo. And then we have 2 pigs, Hamlet and Napoleon. We call them Team Naplet. And they're from the same litter. A friend of a friend had got them when they were piglets, and they were living in a suburb. And it was just determined that that really wasn't the best place for them as they got older and bigger. And so they are living with us, and we have learned a lot about pigs. Obviously, we had to learn a lot about pigs, but when I say we learned a lot about pigs, we actually learned a lot about animals and kind of the next phase of our growth, personal development, personal growth around serving animals. So we didn't learn so much about pigs as just how we want to help animals. So you might want to remind me to come back to that if we get around to that conversation. And then we have Baba, who is our 8-year-old Jersey steer, who is just, he's amazing. He was saved at a day old and hand raised by 2 wonderful people. He thinks he is a 2,000-pound dog. And due to the loss of one of his humans a few years ago and the aging of another one of his humans, he needed somewhere to go. Unfortunately, everybody who wanted to adopt him wanted to butcher him. And as a pet, that just wasn't on the agenda for his human. So it took a while, but we got connected and we agreed to take him. And then recently, a couple weeks ago, we took in a blind turkey. So now we have a blind turkey named Bob. That is the family.
That is the family. Oh my gosh.
Currently the family.
Currently the family. So yes. A few things I wanted to go back because, when you were talking about some of the dogs, you talked about doing a combination of therapies that you've kind of added in acupuncture and then laser treatment and all these different modalities for the health and well-being treatment of the dogs. And I'm sure if something were to happen, you would do it for the pigs and the cow too. So the steer too, I have no doubt knowing you. But talk a little bit about that. You said you didn't grow up like that. So it wasn't like, and it's not like you use it for yourself.
Right. Yeah. So, I grew up with, we did have pigs and goats and dogs and rabbits, and we did your standard Western veterinary care. And, I had some experience myself when I lived in San Francisco through the work that I did there as a life coach. I became introduced and familiar with acupuncture and energetic healing. So that probably opened the door for me. But I tend to not do a lot of that stuff. Well, I don't do a lot of acupuncture things for myself. But when we started doing the dogs, I just, realized that I wanted to provide them with the best treatment options, and not always treatment, because you're not always able to cure or treat what you're working with. But I just wanted to provide them with I realized I wanted to provide them with everything that would help them live their best life, whatever that meant. And so I just didn't know at the time what was available. It's easy to know, and now this was 12 years ago, essentially when I really started exploring. So there's a lot more available now than there was back then. So people should keep that in mind. Um, so when we had our first few dogs, and as simple as Vivian being blind, I at the time I didn't know that there were specialists. I thought, you go to your vet and they take care of everything. Um, and the vet that we were seeing, they were like, well, if you want, you can go see an ophthalmologist and see if there's other options. Oh, okay, that's cool. So a lot of our exploration with different therapies or medicine just started right there, because I just didn't even know those things existed. Mm-hmm. And then we moved, and within the first month that we were in Vancouver, Vivian had a puncture wound and we had to go to an emergency hospital. And within 2 weeks of that visit, I ended up working at that vet hospital. Mm-hmm. And because they were looking for a job and I didn't have anything to do at the time. And so I learned that there were oncologists and internal medicine specialists. And then as the dogs that we had started having really uncommon health issues, I was like, okay, well, what other things can we be doing for them? And so I just started researching, and I found out that, we had a local traditional Chinese medicine doctor who went to school specifically to do this with animals. And so that really started kind of our holistic journey. I made an appointment and we went, and started to see that there were results from pursuing acupuncture and the Chinese medicine. And so then I just made it my business to, I ask a lot of questions. It's, I don't just, I have a lot of faith and trust, but I also want to know, just like I do with Western medicine, how does this work? What's our approach here, and what are we changing? And then we had a dog, that had to have surgery on her knee, and somebody had just mentioned that there was a physical therapy doctor, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know that existed. So I made an appointment, and then based off of our experience there, it was like, well, yeah, that makes sense. Now that we know that one's available, like, oh, our paralyzed dog should be going to see a physical therapist and doing water therapy. And she introduced us, they use laser treatment and what is that? Electric magnetic field therapy. And things are always changing and evolving, and things are being added on. But I just realized, like, I wasn't coming from being a spiritual life coach and being open to and understanding energetics. I just realized that, like, I didn't need to be, it wasn't going to be one thing that was mm-hmm. going to take care of the angels. And I would say, even today, I am still I'm a healthy skeptic. Like, I don't believe, and I'm a healthy skeptic all the way around. I don't think that Western medicine holds all the answers. And I don't think that holistic or Eastern or energetics hold all the answers. So whenever somebody tells me you should only do this, or that they believe that this fixed their dog, I'm usually pretty skeptical. It's usually not one thing. And we're all individual, right? We would never say that just because it worked for one human, means it's going to work for all of them. We're all different.
I have that conversation with people about diet all the time, that I don't think it's one diet fits every dog or every cat.
Right.
Yeah, depends on so many different factors. And I think that the same thing happens with modalities. Like, I'm sure you do a myriad of modalities for one, where you might do different modalities and different things for another, just because they're different. They have
Yep.
different issues going on. They have different genetics, different history, different things have happened to them.
Right.
We
Yeah.
can't lump them into one box and say, okay, well, everybody's the same.
Right. And part of it, I realize that some of it is, I've had people tell me that, their Chinese medicine doctor cured their dog of cancer, and that was the only treatment that they used. And that's sure, that might be possible. I don't rule that out. Is that a risk, what I consider a risk that I'm willing to take? No. Like, I want to try everything, because I know people who have gone completely natural in their treatment plan and it's failed them. Like, let's bring everything to the table and figure out what's going to work, how they're going to complement each other, and let's leave no stone unturned. Like, I'm not going to leave anything up to chance. Like, let's throw everything in the kitchen sink and then start pulling things out that aren't working for us. So I think I do take a slightly, I don't believe in any one thing. And I understand, I ask a lot of questions, so I understand that there are, risks doing things this way and risks doing things that way. But, we've dealt with some even though we've only helped 30 dogs, we've dealt with a lot of very unique conditions in each one of those dogs. And so we have a lot of experience in just trusting. Well, not my husband, but I trust my gut. And I know that that's something that, not everybody is in tune with, but I just say, I just get these senses and I'm like, yeah, we're going to do that. No, we're not going to do that. And at the end, we never know what's going to work or what result we're going to get. And we don't ever, we're never even focused on that. Like, what are we doing today? Mm-hmm. If you pick whatever dog that is having an illness, okay, what's their condition today? What's our plan today? Okay, well, maybe we'll need to change that tomorrow. Like, we just take one day at a time. Mm-hmm.
But I know I love that, because I was talking this morning and earlier to somebody, and I said, if I could teach people anything, would be how to listen to their gut. Like, how to listen to that feeling and think to yourself, like, how does this feel to me? Does this feel right?
Right.
And that's, to me, what you're speaking to, is like knowing almost in your whole being that this is really what, like, this sounds like it's like, it feels like it's the right thing to do.
Yes.
And sometimes contrary to what everybody says, usually.
Right.
And whatever, like, what the norm is, quote unquote, you're right. Sitting there going, for my dog or for myself, this is what I feel is right for me. Right.
Yeah. And, we've had some really great experiences. Early on, we had a Dalmatian and I was working at the emergency clinic. He was blind and a senior, and at home, he kept having these little tremors. And I knew there was something not right. And I kept taking him in, and he would, of course, never do it at the hospital. And they're like, unless we know what we're looking at, like, I don't even know what direction to point you in. And so after 3 months of it, and knowing the whole time, I'm like, there's something. I know there's something. And I also didn't know, I was new to all of this, so I didn't have the wealth of knowledge and experience that I have now, or the resources of who to contact. So it wasn't until he did it in front of a doctor and they were like, oh, well, maybe that looks like a neurologic tremor. Let's go see, a neurologist, which we did. And we did an MRI. and he had a tumor underneath his nasal cavity. And the neurologist there said, and he said, I'll give him about 3 months to live. You can't remove it. That it's just what it is. Um, and in my gut, I was like, that just doesn't feel right. So I went back to our internist who I was getting to know and developed a relationship with, and I was like, I just let's look into, is there any option? And lo and behold, there was at the University of Minnesota, they were doing a research study on brain tumors in dogs. He reached out to the head neurologist. They have had removed hundreds of tumors in that location, um, with no problems at all. So we went to the University of Minnesota. He got to be part of this research project that they were doing. He lived for 18 months. His tumor did come back after 18 months, but like, I just trusted my gut. I was like, that. I just don't believe it. Like, and that doesn't, and it's not, like you said, it's hard. You can't just teach people how to trust their gut because
Mm-hmm.
it's not willing something to be true.
Mm-hmm.
You're not,
No.
yeah, you're not willing it to be different. It's just, like, it's just that this, there's got to be more. Like, there's got to be more because there's plenty of times that I get information and my gut says, got it. Like, there's nothing left for us to do.
Mm-hmm.
We're just gonna take care of them. So it's not forcing your will on them, or on the world. It's just knowing when something else is available, when you just know that what you're being told isn't all that there is.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, to get back to your original question. So yeah, I mean, we've learned about all the different modalities. And so over time, we've just experienced what it means to have a physical therapist. And even today, this is a conversation we've been having a lot around here, is our physical therapist is, we have a few physical therapy clinics in Portland, Oregon, but we only have one that has a doctor like Dr. Shaw, who does manual physical therapy. So she's actually doing manual adjustments, and that's part of her routine, part of the wellness plan. Um, Most physical therapy is a lot of exercises, swim therapy, um, different modalities like that. So even when you talk about physical therapy, like, there's a whole range of what's
Mm-hmm.
available. And for us, I we still haven't found anybody, and I am not just me looking, like our doctors looking, like, we're very fortunate that we have the physical therapy doctor that we have, because there really aren't more than a handful of them practicing the way that she does, which is unfortunate because every single week that we keep doing, and we've been working with her for 10 years, with 30 dogs. What I know is that the kind of care that she provides is what helps them thrive
Mm-hmm.
physically,
Mm-hmm.
what keeps their bodies healthy, moving. People will see videos of our kids in their wheelchairs running around, or they'll see them pulling themselves around as they often do, and they'll say, God, they look great and they look so happy. And I would tell you, they look happy in the videos, and life looks like it's great. And then I take them to see Dr. Shaw, and she will go to do her physical check on them, and they are, their shoulder is out of place, or
Mm-hmm.
their ribs are tight, and restricted. And then she does her magic, and it's like, okay, well, this dog was happy yesterday, but today, after they've been adjusted and worked with, it's like having a whole new dog.
Mm-hmm.
They're even more active, and they're even more happy. Because a lot of people will ask us, why do you spend the money to do this routine physical therapy? They think physical therapy is for you get an injury, you do
Right.
physical therapy, do it for a little while, and then you're done. No, no, because I mean, it's for anybody who's been to a human who's been to a chiropractor, like I have been since I was 10. Sure, I can go long periods without going. I also know what it feels like, though, to be adjusted on the regular basis. Am I okay? Do I look okay right now? I haven't been to the chiropractor in a year. Sure. I also know that if I go back, I'm going to feel so much better.
Yeah,
Um,
I had that, and I'll take it happens to be that my vet is also a chiropractor. The vet I'm seeing now is also a traditional Chinese medicine vet, so she does chiropractic too. And when I'll take Tonka in for a checkup and she'll adjust him, and and then we often think, like, as a human around him, could I ever see that he's out of alignment? What do I think? Like, I'm like, you might ask yourself, like, how does that happen? Like, I mean, basically, he didn't do anything, but it could
right,
be jumping off something wrong. I mean, he does drive in the car with me, and every now and then, I'll have to brake, and he gets
right,
jarred
right,
or something. And then I'll take him in and she'll adjust him, and he's totally new. Like, it's
right,
like you can just tell by the way he walks and the way he jumps and runs that he's feeling great. I mean, he's also very weather oriented, so he doesn't do well in the heat. So if we have a nice fall cool day in the Northeast, you can tell there's like a skip in his step. He's like, oh, I love this weather, as he trots, so to speak. And you've seen him run, so he trots.
yeah,
And so he just, like, it's so interesting that, because we all take into all those considerations, is like, how, when are you exercising, where are you exercising, and the fact that just normal wear and tear
right,
of everyday activities can cause them to be out of alignment, or something can get, you know,
right.
all of a
And
sudden.
and with many of the animals that we serve, with them being paralyzed or two-legged, they're constantly using their bodies, which includes their bones, their ligaments, their tendons, their muscles, in ways that they were never intended to be used that way. Um,
Mm-hmm.
your body can adapt, and their bodies do adapt, but it's kind of like when you have a paralyzed dog and they're using their front legs, like they overdevelop to compensate. They overdevelop their shoulders, and that's a lot of additional pressure on those muscles and how they pull on the tendons and how those tendons and ligaments pull on the bones. That changes
Right.
all of the structure. And so when you have cases like that, I have compared, I've taken a dog that we've gotten that's paralyzed, that is a certain age, and followed other paralyzed dogs that are of the same age who don't get the same care that our kids do. And it's years ahead of ours. Their dogs are getting arthritis and pulling tendons, and are unable to get around as well as they were when they were younger. I've had many animal parents of disabled dogs, paralyzed or two-legged. They're like, I can't believe that so and so is 10 years old and they still get around that well. Well, that's because we've spent a whole 9 years that we've had them taking care of their bodies
Mm-hmm.
so that they don't age faster.
And
So
that's where I got very into diet, because I'm actually treating a dog right now who is exactly almost identical breed combination as Tonka. So border collie black lab mix, same exact age, but has a huge weight issue. And when I tell you, very overweight. And when I tell you, this dog is so slow, really stiff, and I've been working with him for about 10 months. And yes, he's doing better, but it's when I got to see, what feeding healthy does really, and all the alternative modalities, it becomes so apparent to me because I'm dealing with a dog that almost, is identical, is built differently, but still I'm like, wow, this is like night and day.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
And there's so many things that contribute to that. It's not, like you said earlier, their genetics, their own environment, their own activity levels, and then just, you know, a lifetime, depending on the age of the dog, a lifetime of care.
Mhm.
And we all do what we know, and we do the best that we can. And as we
Mhm.
learn, we do better. But yeah, it's clearly amazing how, as you learn more and more, the differences that you can see. And I had mentioned to you before we started doing the video, is it's been, the world of veterinary care has changed during the pandemic and still after. It's very difficult to get veterinary care. And that's been a challenge for us, only in that we know, once you know that something makes a difference, you can't go back to not having it.
Mhm.
Not, you wouldn't consciously choose to go back to not having it. And we have found, we're currently in a place where we just can't get all of the care that we're used to getting. And it's like, that hurts because we know the benefit it is,
Mhm.
and the benefit that we're not able to provide, because it just simply isn't available.
Mhm.
Um, so, yeah. Just,
And so how do you support all this? So let's talk a little bit about, how people can help you.
sure, absolutely.
And
Yeah. So we are a registered 501c3 nonprofit. We are, 100% volunteer operated. So every penny of every dollar that gets donated goes to provide care for the animals that are here. You can, just so that we get that part out of the way, we're on Facebook, Instagram. I know that you'll probably have all this information up with the video when it's posted. So I won't go over the specific places, but Facebook and Instagram, we do have our own website. And on all three of those platforms, it'll tell you where you can make donations. And donations can be monetary. We have an Amazon wish list. And there are also plenty of other ways that people can give, whether that's sharing about us through social media or through however you want to share. But we are a smaller organization. We have always been small. We intend to stay small. So everything that, the way that our message gets out is through people like you, who want to talk about us and share about us. Um, Jan knows, after, gosh, we've been working together since 2015. Yeah, wow, 2015. Uh, our nonprofit is for to serve animals, but that's just a small tidbit of what we do. When we created this organization, we had spent some time paying attention to other rescues and sanctuaries, and we determined that, in our experience, we always felt like an outsider looking in to what these organizations were doing and who they were. And we wanted people to really get involved and really feel connected, even if they weren't next door. If they're across the world, we want them to feel like they're part of our Ohana, our family. And so that's really important to us as well. We think that they're in this society today, we keep moving further and further away from being connected with each other. And I think that we need a lot more of that, to help balance out humanity, for lack of a better term. So yeah, so you can follow us, make donations online. All of our funding is from private donors, and that just means the public. We don't currently get any type of grants. We don't do any paid sponsorships with large brands. We're against doing any of that, but that's a whole nother conversation. So no grants, no paid sponsorships, and yeah, so none of those big things. It's all people like you who make a difference.
Awesome. Well, it has been great to catch up with you, and I'm glad you got to update everybody on the Angels, and I hope this helps. I mean, that's really what my mission was, to have you on, was to get your good work out there, because you do make such a difference. And I think everything we can do these days to promote any element of caregiving and good inspires other people to do the same. So
yeah, I agree. And yeah, we're really grateful that you took time to chat with us and to share us with everybody. We're really excited. As I'm sure you probably feel the same way. I could talk about the Angels for hours and tell stories for hours, but that would probably get pretty old and boring. So
well, thanks so much, and we really appreciate it. And for everybody else, join us again really soon, and we feel free to comment or like and share this podcast with other people.
Yes, please do that, Holly. So thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Pets, People, Life, and Longevity, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can catch every episode at exvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcast app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and wherever you find podcasts.